without further ado, I think we have 17 or 18 Stanley Cups here amongst the four individuals. Very delighted. I'll introduce the guys and we'll jump in. Of course, we've got the captain of the 84-85 team, Oilers legend Wayne Gretzky. Thanks, Wayne. Kevin Lowe, a great stalwart defenseman and vice chair for Oilers Entertainment Group. Hall of Fame defenseman, Paul Coffey, and multiple Stanley Cup winner, Mike Krushelnyski. Very delighted to have you guys here. So, Wayne, we'll start with you. Obviously, you know, in your storied career, you've done it all. You've set so many individual records, but this is a little bit different. It's a team record, a historic honor. Maybe reflect on the announcement, on the honor, and what it means to you.
Well, thanks, Tim, and nice to see these guys again. And we appreciate everyone coming out tonight. You know, the history of our game, there's been so many great teams, and for us to be selected as one of those teams is without question one of the great thrills for this group and tremendous honor for not only the team but for the city. And it was a special group with a lot of really good talent, but more importantly, a very unselfish team that ultimately wanted to become a Stanley Cup champion. So we appreciate the fan vote, and we're very proud of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Wayne. Next to you, Paul. You know, it was a very close-knit team. So many great stories about how you guys came together, obviously, the year before, 83-84, for the first Cup. Going into that 84-85 season, maybe just talk a little bit about your reflection on that season and what this means to you.
Well, you can have good players, you can have great players, you can have the greatest player, but if you don't play as a team, things don't happen. And you know, Wayne just mentioned the group we had, and that year was very, very unselfish, and that's what makes a great team. And you know, we didn't set out for anything other than to win a Stanley Cup. We knew we were the hunted at that point. We were a cup deep. We were going for a second, and we knew that we had to raise our game even more. And you know, it's a real credit to that team. We had some great hockey players, and we had some real team guys, Dave Semenko, and you know, the guys that surrounded him, and that's what made that group special.
Thanks, Paul. Next up, Mike. So, Mike, you came from Boston that season. Obviously, you'd established yourself as an everyday NHL player, but you really, you know, took your career and your game to that next level, that 84-85 season, obviously playing along Wayne and Yari. You were an all-star that year, over 40 goals. Maybe talk a little bit about how you saw things that season coming in Edmonton.
Well, I was pretty lucky. I went from playing with Ricky Middleton in Boston to graduating a level. So lucky enough to get put on Wayne's line with Yari. But as I've stated before, I've said it before, these guys found out how to win the year before. And in that year, I was watching these guys a lot. So, you know, it's funny how it gets passed on and how it gets taught, but there really is a system to it. And fortunately, these guys were able to pass it on to me, and then we continued on. So, very fortunate to be part of that group. A lot of fun, a lot of guys, but you know, they were not only great hockey players, but they were great guys. So, lucky enough to be part of it.
Thanks, Mike. Kevin. So, Kevin, at this event, you're wearing a few different hats, obviously as vice chair for Oilers Entertainment Group, but also a great defenseman on that team. There have been some celebrations in recent memory, obviously closing down the Coliseum, coming into Rogers Place, celebration of the 84 Stanley Cup. Maybe just talk a little bit about, from your perspective, what this one means to you.
Yes, we have been fortunate in the last 2 or 3 years, put Glenn Sather's name up in the rafters and close the Coliseum. A lot of great memories, and open up Rogers Place. But I think this probably will be the last one of the 80s Oilers, let's call them, but a really special one. And what it means to me is I think over the years, and I'm sure these guys were the same way, they would have been asked by people, you know, who did we think, or who did I think was the greatest dynasty? And of course, you know, humbled by the question and thinking that they would consider us in part of that equation. You know, the Montreal Canadiens, of course, and the Islanders, and you know, even though the Bruins only won a couple in the 70s, they were a great team. Who knows if Bobby Orr hadn't got injured, they might have won more. But no one ever really asked who the best team was. And for, you know, 3.6 million fans to vote the 84-85 Oilers as the greatest team of all time, at least in their minds, is, you know, now we can say, hey, we played in the greatest team of all time, which is not a lot of people can say.
Thanks, Kevin. Last question to Wayne before we open it up. Just looking at some of the highlights of that season, Wayne, of course, your 6th consecutive Hart Trophy, 5th straight Art Ross Trophy, your first Conn Smythe. Coffey, of course, your first Norris Trophy. Yari won the Lady Byng that year. You and Yari both scored your 90th goals of the season in Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Finals. And on it goes. So many great milestones that year. Does anything stick out to you that year, Wayne, that sort of lasted the test of time from a memory perspective?
That we lost Game 1 that year in the finals. You know what? We didn't really think a whole lot of it, although we knew the stats and we knew everything that went with it. The whole goal from the beginning was, you know, if you lift the Stanley Cup, all the individual accolades will fall into place, whether it's the Norris Trophy or the Conn Smythe or the Hart or the Art Ross. So it was just a good group. It was an interesting group because it was a lot of great players, but everyone worked hard. So it didn't matter who you were on the team. There was always somebody beside you that was outworking you. So nobody ever let their guard down, and that's what made it fun to go to the rink every day.
Thanks, Wayne. We'll open it up for questions from the floor. I just ask that you state your name and an outlet before you ask your question. Anybody? We're good? Okay, thanks, everybody. We're going to
Tim,
break. Oh,
Maybe,
sorry, Kevin.
just one last thing. You know, on February 11th, we're going to celebrate this in Edmonton at Rogers Place, and we've always had great attendance by our fans. But really, the really important thing for all of us is that the proceeds of that event will go to the Dave Semenko Foundation. Dave was really passionate about kids that were less fortunate. So when you ask, of course, any of these guys would want to come back and celebrate, but we're reaching out to other NHL Hall of Famers to come out as well. And of course, when they hear the name Dave Semenko, they're all willing to support. So if anyone happens to be out in Edmonton, February 11th at Rogers Place, it'll be a night to remember, I'm sure.